Hey guys and gals, and welcome back to another episode of 4th&Baron. I'm Blake,
And I'm Connor.
and this is our show where we break down all the hottest stories in sports and eSports. Connor, how was your weekend, and how's your New Year going?
Weekend was great. Good to have the day off, especially because we had playoff football and the first week of the LCS starting up. So I just cuddled to a blanket in the freezing cold weather here in Chicago and just watched, and it was wonderful.
Sounds manly.
It was.
It was a great weekend.
It was a manly
I
blanket.
mimicked your position. I definitely can't blame you for that. This was a big weekend for sports and esports. We're going to dive right into it. So on today's episode, coins don't flip, Immortals don't lose, and Packers don't make playoff history. And that's where we're going to begin on today's episode. Down 20-13 to the Cardinals nearing the end of the fourth quarter, Aaron Rodgers led Green Bay on what I'll call a highly improbable streak down the field.
Kidding.
Including, it was nuts. Including a 60-yard pass to Jeff Jarvis on 4th and 20 from the Green Bay's own 4-yard line to stay alive, followed shortly by a 41-yard connection to Rodgers to Jarvis again on a heave and a prayer as time expired to send the game to overtime. Overtime proved to be short-lived as Larry Fitzgerald scrambled for 75 yards on the opening play, then took a shovel pass to win for the game-winning touchdown.
I was so happy when that happened.
Well, Connor, what do you think of this insane game?
Oh my gosh! Who the heck is Jeff Jarvis?
Yeah, kind of a nobody, but he's looking like he could be a real talent.
Oh my gosh, Aaron Rodgers. So he had his Hail Mary against the Detroit Lions earlier this season, and everybody thought like, "Wow, that was crazy. There's no way that's going to happen again." And I was talking to some friends. The last drive of the Packers was like a weird kind of microcosm of their whole season. Like, just them looking down and out, their defense not doing them any favors, and then Aaron Rodgers just stepping up and just out of nowhere making enormous plays. That was probably the most ridiculous just drive I've ever seen in professional football, and yet the Cardinals managed to keep it in. Larry Fitzgerald, I think the player out there right now who deserves a Super Bowl ring more than just about anyone, really showed why. He came out, put the team on his back, had an enormous. Well, actually, the whole, as unlikely as the final Packers play was, the final Cardinals drive was just as ridiculous. It ended with Carson Palmer was about to get sacked, broke a tackle, came out, found Larry Fitzgerald in the open field with about 20 yards in front of him, and he ran, broke tackles, juked defenders, got to like the 1 yard, like the 3-yard line, and then the next play, shovel pass to Larry Fitzgerald as he runs in just with room to spare to seal the victory. It was an insane game, definitely one of the most entertaining I've ever seen, and it makes me excited so much for this Panthers-Cardinals game coming up in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, by the way, you mentioned that Cardinals drive. Carson Palmer is the last quarterback you'd ever think would be scrambling to find Larry Fitzgerald. It's like he was Russell Wilson or something like that.
Yeah.
For one play of his entire life, he decided to be Russell Wilson, and that was that play. I'm with you. It was insane. But I don't even know if we can... I mean, while those plays in the last minute of regulation by the Packers and by Aaron Rodgers were amazing, I don't know if we can call it a drive, right? It was really two insane plays.
I guess drive is a strong word.
Because when I was writing this intro, I was like, "Oh, they're impressive. March down the field," and I'm like, "It wasn't a march. It's like I called it a streak down the field. It was insane." And I'll say this, because I chose the Cardinals coming into this game, and I had remarked to you I had remarked to you very strongly that I thought the Packers were a bad team. That I thought their win over the Redskins was much ado about nothing, that the Redskins were a poor team, and that people were overhyping the Packers as a return to form challenger. And I still think that, having watched the game on Saturday night, I still think the Packers were a very bad team. But you know what? Aaron Rodgers is a very good quarterback. And goodness gracious, does this man have the strongest arm that you've ever seen in your life. That last play, as time expired, to Jeff Jarvis, 41 yards, but, I mean, you just have to watch this. He's essentially in the process of being tackled as he scrambles outside the pocket. He's falling away from this pass. He doesn't step into it. He doesn't follow through. He's falling away and just man arms
Just
it.
believes. He just
Yeah,
faiths it all the way in there.
and gives it some serious hang time too, because Jeff Jarvis wasn't in the end zone yet. He was still running for it,
Yeah.
and so he just hoists it way up into the lights. I mean, this man has maybe the most like raw physical talent of a quarterback we've ever seen. But I'm going to hold to my original premise. Green Bay was a bad team. Their running game slightly better in this. I mean, they've been getting better from the regular season. Don't get me wrong. They're playing like
Yeah.
they belonged to in the first-ish round of the playoffs. But their offensive defensive lines both stepped up their games. They were finally protecting Aaron Rodgers. They had some running game going, but I think that we're there. Even then, we're kept in this game kind of artificially because Carson Palmer randomly had a really terrible game. His red zone efficiency was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, he threw that one interception in the red zone, and then basically threw one that was tipped and randomly landed into the hands of an Arizona receiver for a touchdown, but that probably should have been an interception. I mean, so he had a bizarrely bad game. This game was bizarre all around. But I still hold to that premise. Green Bay's still a bad team, and they deserve to lose.
Yeah. Oh, you're definitely right, and I think you're right on both accounts. Aaron Rodgers making a good case as to why he is the best quarterback in the NFL right now, and potentially, I keep saying I want to hate him. I really do. I want to hate him so bad, and I can't do it.
He's an unfortunately likable guy.
He's so likable.
He really
He's
is.
so talented. I would even be willing to. I think you can hype on Brady all you want and all those rings and stuff, but I think that Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be, by the end of his career, the greatest quarterback of all time.
Well, let's put a pin in that, right? Because let's not forget that he had by far the worst season of his career this season.
Yeah,
right?
and the worst season of his career was
insane,
almost not making it to the NFC Championship.
No, hold on, two insane Hail Marys, is what people remember from this season. Not like the outstandingly bad completion percentage. By the way, how many interceptions did he throw this year compared to? Remember going into the season, everyone was talking about how Aaron Rodgers had one interception at home or something like that.
Two.
I mean, 2 interceptions at home, and that was supposed to be why he was such a god, and he threw so many interceptions this year. I want to make this last point to you because people need to understand that Aaron Rodgers should not even have had time to make that final drive, because the Cardinals forced him, got him on a 4-and-out. Right, they got a turnover on downs as Aaron Rodgers skipped a pass to I think Jeff Jarvis actually to fail the conversion. Yeah, bad pass by the way. So the Cardinals recover and with maybe 3 minutes to 45 left, and all they have to do is just burn some clock, right? And no, on second down at the Green Bay 35-yard line, Bruce Arians decides to take a shot down the field to the end zone. And Carson Palmer just throws this wildly out-of-bounds ball, and they just give up a down. They give up burning out 40 seconds, and I'm like, what are you doing, Bruce? What? You just have to burn the clock. Don't give this guy who's already completed a miracle Hail Mary this season, don't give him more time. That's what he did. He gave him about an extra 30 to 40 seconds to play with. And I'm like, Bruce Arians, you're a great coach, but what are you doing, man?
And that's the second time this season this postseason, that just terrible clock management and just flubbing a situation that should just be, run it and run out the clock, has resulted in this case almost, but the other team making a big comeback.
Yeah, totally. Well, we're going to move on to the other.
Yeah, let's talk about the other.
Yeah, some of the other games that happened, which were also fantastic. Because meanwhile, in Foxborough, the Patriots rebounded from their late season slump to top the red-hot Chiefs. The Patriots will go to their 5th straight AFC Championship game, looking like a team returned to form after getting back a number of injured players, notably wide receivers Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola.
Oh yeah,
Connor, and I'm gonna love asking you this question. Just how impressive were these Patriots?
Well, I need some answers from you here, Blake, because I seem to recall last show that you had doubt, that you were saying no, these Patriots, they're not going to win this game. There's no way.
Yeah, well,
and
let me set the record straight. All right, I am a near lifelong Patriots fan. Okay, and I knew
you were once a fan of the Los Angeles Rams.
I was never a fan of the Los Angeles Rams. I was a fan during the brief interim period where they shacked up in St. Louis, but that didn't last too long.
Anyway.
But moving into this week's game, I picked the Chiefs. All right. I told you I went against my heart of hearts. I told you that I was off the Patriots bandwagon because
You didn't
they
believe.
were
What kind of
they
a
were
fan are
destined.
you?
They were obliterated by injuries. They were losing so many. They lost so many personnel. If you talk about, Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola, Gronk had 2 injuries, a knee and a back injury listed. On the defensive side, Devin McCourtney, Gerard Mayo, Chandler Jones. Their offensive line, Connor, had 50 different combinations this year. 50 different combinations of offensive linemen. That's mind blowing. That's absurd. You can't win like that. Meanwhile, the Chiefs had won 11 straight with insane efficiency. Alex Smith looking like the game manager that he is, not turning the ball over. They had an incredibly opportunistic defense I thought was going to be all over Tom Brady. Excuse me.
Yeah, don't wear your voice
All over
out.
Tom Brady. Yeah. So I did this because I knew in my heart of hearts that my Patriots could pull this thing
What are
out,
you
and I
doing?
couldn't jinx them. I couldn't
You
jinx them. I
did
couldn't do that to
not.
them.
That
So
is not.
I went with the other team. I knew it. I never doubted that they could pull it out. So I'm going to clear the record, clear that up for you. Because by the way, this little guy, that we like to call Psycho Tom, showed up to the game, Connor. And by that I'm
Who are
referring
you?
to, the god himself, Tom Brady. There are like 3 or 4 games every year, and Patriots fans know this, where Tom Brady just shows up with a different kind of emotional frenzy to a game, and you could see him just, he's slapping Gronk's helmet, or he's like, viciously hugging his offensive coordinator, and he is just dialed in, dialed up. And if you're on the opposing team and Psycho Tom shows up, you lose that game. You just do. And he showed up on Saturday against the Chiefs. His passes, perfect spirals, lightning fast arms, follow through. They were right, threading the needle, hitting receivers everywhere. And this Patriots team that had gotten Julian Edelman back, who's so important to Tom Brady, was just lighting it up all over the field. But I want to make this point: it wasn't just Julian Edelman. Let me read this to you. James White, 2 receptions for 39 yards. Keyshawn Martin, 2 receptions for 57 yards. Danny Amendola, 2 receptions for 18 yards. Brandon LaFell had three receptions. So people all over the map were making plays. The Chiefs just couldn't keep up. Edelman, took down about 100 yards. Gronkowski, had his requisite 2 touchdowns. It's just they were playing like a team that didn't look like they were injured at all, Connor. They looked like they were all completely healthy. I thought Julian Edelman was going to be a distraction on the field coming back from that Jones fracture, because you remember that Des Bryant had a Jones fracture, and he tried to come back for that. Was totally limited for the entire season. Julian Edelman's
he had Matt Castle, right?
That's also probably a big reason. There's a slight difference in skill level from Matt Castle to Tom Brady, but Julian Edelman looking like he's not even injured at all. This team is playing out of its mind. Like they just totally 180 reversed form, and I knew it could happen all along. Give me what you got.
I don't even know why I'm here. Like, why do you need me to talk? You could just. That's it. There it is.
You're here to witness, Connor. You're here to witness the Patriots rise.
I'm here to llisten to you just wax poetic about the Patriots. I think that, in a nutshell, all right, I'm gonna say what you just took like 30 minutes to say in one sentence, in 3 words. Brady and Belichick. That's just what it is. It's just they're on the field. If Brady's on the field, Belichick's the coach, they can win. Doesn't really matter what else is going on. It's the chances there, and they can definitely win. And they're a formidable team.
We should take a little second here to give some credit to Alex Smith, because
you want to take a little chill pill.
What?
I said you want to take a little chill pill.
Yeah, I need to dial it back for a second.
Bring it down to like a 14.
We're gonna come back to the Patriots later on, but right now I need to give some credit to the man we just beat into the ground, Alex Smith, because I always call him a game manager, and a lot of people think that that's a derogatory kind of thing. He doesn't really make game-winning plays, but he won't turn the ball over. Mm-hmm. This was the first time that I've ever seen the Chiefs ask Alex Smith to do everything for them. And he, to give credit where credit is due, rose to the occasion. He had 50 pass attempts, Connor. That's crazy. No interceptions. His balls were looking great as he threw them. He's just like, spirals right through the air, perfect arcs, and I really loved what I saw from Alex Smith. Gotta give credit where it's due.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think that Alex Smith was playing his heart out there, and they just couldn't match him. The Patriots were looking back to form, and they're looking like a formidable team, really going into the AFC Championship game. The Broncos are definitely going to have a tough time, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that later.
That we are.
I can only stand talking about the Patriots for so long. So we're moving on to the League Championship Series. That's right, the NA and EU LCS began this week, starting with EU this past Thursday. And we had a bunch of games, making my break so nice. So we started out with EU, and I said you had to answer for the Patriots, Blake, but you and I both have to answer right now for Origin. So starting with EU, just a general overview, we have 3 teams standing at 2-0. That is Unicorns of Love, H2K, and G2 eSports. Coming in behind them, 1-1, we have Roccat, Elements, Fnatic, Team Vitality, and then the 3 teams left at 0-2 without a win are Origin, Giants, and Team Splice. Meanwhile, in the North American standings, we have 2 teams sitting at 2-0, Energy Esports and the aptly named Immortals, followed by just about every other team at 1-1 in Counter Logic Gaming, Renegades, Dignitas, Cloud9, TSM, Echo Fox, and then coming in without a win in NA are Team Impulse and Team Liquid. So, Blake, what did we learn after this first week? I know this is the perfect time to make huge, sweeping generalizations about things with very little data. So I want all of that from you right now.
I don't know about huge or sweeping, so I'm going to go short and narrow.
Oh, come on.
Which is, in the EU LCS, we learned, at least I learned, that Reckless is a much more diverse player than I was willing to give him credit for. I had mentioned to you last week, that he's such a passive laner. He really can't exhibit that much aggression, and therefore Spirit would have a hard time ganking that lane. Well, Noxiac seems to have really rubbed off on him, or, like I said, I may just not have been giving him enough credit, because Reckless really played outside himself, especially in that game with Origin. He really played with a fervor, with an aggression that was really commendable, and I think that's going to be really key to Fnatic's success moving forward.
Yeah. What about in NA?
In NA, I think we learned that teams need time to gel, and this is something that we learn every year, right? We know this. You can't just go right out into a split after a week of practice and be a solid team, as we were expecting TSM to do. But like I said, we always get this expectation that all the talent just figures it out, and that's just not the case. We saw TSM go 1-1, and to be honest, I liked how they played. I thought that their game, I thought that they showed some lack of coordination at times, but I thought that their talent, their mechanical skill was all right where I expected it to be. I saw some pretty good coordination in holding off Baron power plays to relatively little gain, especially against Team Liquid. And then they against the Liquid game, they had one good counterpunch late in the game, and with those extended death timers, they just took advantage and won the game. I thought that was actually pretty impressive, and I think that TSM obviously needs time to gel, but I think that's all fixable problems.
I like both those analyses. I'm going to start out with the EU side. So talking about Fnatic specifically. I think one of the things we saw, well, on the one hand, Fnatic did not look so good against Team Vitality on day 2. On day 1, something that we really saw that I actually had predicted, which you can see in my fantasy league, is that the Gamsu Spirit combination proved to be a lot stronger than a lot of people were expecting. I think a lot of people knew Spirit was going to come in and do some good things. I was talking about Spirit last week, but Gamsu, he I think, flew really far under the radar during the NA splits last year. He was, Dignitas a top laner. Dignitas kind of had their, mid-season boost and then fell off, before the playoffs. Didn't look too great, losing to Impulse. But Gamsu was always looking like a carry for that team, and he was a big reason as to why they kept getting ahead. And I think him on Fnatic, with all this talent around him, and especially with the synergy with Spirit, as the split goes on, is going to be the number one story from that team. That's my thing.
Yeah, I like you said, I was not a believer really in Gamsu, and even
Chef
now,
Gamsu.
I'm cautiously still a non-believer. I think he played extraordinarily well. I think he really rose to the occasion. You know, when the bright lights are on him, and Fnatic, you know, the keystone organization in Europe, not like Dignitas, which is kind of like second stringers in North America. He really rose to that occasion. But I will say cautiously, anyone can get on a roll with Olaf, right? If you just get fed a couple kills with Olaf, you can take over that game. Any reasonable professional league player can do that.
That's fair. And he played Olaf in against Vitality and really did not look good. So
Nope.
that is a fair
So
assessment. But
So what about NA? What did you see from
yeah,
them?
so on the NA side, I definitely agree with you. I did. So TSM did look kind of like a bunch of YOLO cube players out there, but especially in the early game, especially when CLG lane swapped them, they just had no idea how to respond to that lane swap. And they played standard lanes against Team Liquid the next day for, I think, very good reason, because they were just not a team that was coordinated enough to pull that off. And you're right, these teams take time to gel, and that's going to be a big factor. But and honestly, the fact that they were able to stall out both of those games for so long and even take the game against Team Liquid says a lot. But the thing that makes me so hesitant about TSM, though, and also about this narrative about teams gelling together, is that there are two very big examples to the contrary sitting on top of the NALCS standings right now. Team Immortals is a brand new team and have not had as much time to practice as, say, like a CLG, who are keeping most of their roster. And then Energy didn't even have their full roster on the first day and still brought it to 2-0. They and looking at that first day's game, to be fair, was harrowing and was dependent on GBM having 2 Baron steals when he's not the jungler. So he stole Baron twice with a normal ability, even though he didn't have Smite, the ability that does a bunch of true damage to neutral monsters, allowing junglers to really easily take it. He stole it twice in one game, which I've never seen before. But that Energy team, I think, is looking really, really scary. But more so than anything, Immortals put their foot down on day 2. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but having a perfect game against Team Impulse in 18 minutes.
I actually want to talk about it right now
All right.
because I'm gonna turn this segment into what didn't we learn from NA in week 1, and for me it's that Immortals are now this world-beating team, right? I honestly don't believe that. I think that they looked impressive. Don't get me wrong; they looked like a top half team, maybe even a top 3 team. And like you said, it's a slight counterpoint to the fact that teams need to gel because they came in and they handled their business. But look, Impulse is going to be the worst team in NA this year. They
That's
just
true.
are.
I
All
think
right,
that's something
we
we've
can accept
seen.
this. And they were playing with subs, and more importantly, they were playing with Gate in the mid lane. And Gate is just a bad mid
He's a
laner.
support.
I mean, he was a mid laner who desperately wants to be a support, to have, you know, those bright lights off of him, to have the
He
pressure
just wants
off
to
of
play
him,
League of
and he
Legends.
just can't. He just can't make it quite down to the bot lane. They always need him back in mid lane. Look at this. I mean, everyone has a solo queue game that just spirals out of control by 12 minutes. Everyone's had that, and that was essentially what happened in this Immortals Impulse game. It's impressive. Don't get me wrong, that they closed the game out as quickly as they did, that they punished those mistakes, but they punished it in a way that was like relatively uncoordinated. There were so many solo kills in that game, so I'm taking a pass on biting at this Immortals hype train for
That's a
now.
fair statement, but I did say that this is the time to make sweeping generalizations on very little development. And because of that,
You're
I'm
right.
here to talk about why Immortals are the best team to ever grace the North American LCS. Huni and Rainover looking fantastic. Huni has not lost a regular season LCS game in a very long time. And
That's a good
I
point.
think he is not looking to lose anymore. Pobelter said that Huni was hyping the team to get to first place. He also said the team gelled really well. I think that's a team of personalities that work out really well. A lot of people were talking about Turtle being unleashed, feeling really comfortable, especially because he's playing now not with a talented support who speaks the same language as him primarily. A lot of there was an argument to be made that with Lustboy he just wasn't as good, and like Dyrus has come
That's a
out, and
good point.
and other TSM members have come out saying that like they're really happy that Turtle seems so happy on this team, that just positive energy in a team is, I think, probably the single biggest reason why I see Immortals doing so well this split. And that's something that it's really hard to find another team. And I think that's also one of the big reasons why Fnatic has been so good in the past, is because of the energy that's created. I mean, the counterexample is CLG, like the past couple of seasons in which they were talking about the kind of like Link with his whole Dunzo manifesto and all that, like the toxic environment, and that weighs down on a team. Even if and it's good when you're winning, but if you lose one game, it all goes downhill. So Immortals rebounding from losing is going to tell us a lot if they lose.
That's a really good point. And honestly, this is something that I hadn't necessarily considered, but on second glance, it does seem like Huni and Wild Turtle would be like friends outside
Doesn't
the
it?
game,
Yeah.
right? It kind of does.
Friendly, happy people.
Yeah, and Adrian, I think is not a strict upgrade over Lust Boy, but at least a side grade and maybe an upgrade. I think I definitely and just on mechanics alone, and definitely in the terms of like having the same language, having the same mindset. You're right. That's probably really valuable.
I'm telling you, man.
We're going to switch over.
Keep going.
We're going to switch over to another esport that's near and dear to our hearts, which is Hearthstone. And that game has been enjoying an abnormal amount of diversity on ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah, an abnormal amount of diversity on ladder for the past few weeks as a bevy of new and exciting cards hit the scene through the League of Explorers adventure. Now that the set has time to has had time to cool off a little bit, we feel that we can look past the crazy decks that have been cropping up and instead focus on the cards themselves. Connor, do you feel that the League of Explorers adventure was a success for the game? And give us some of your top cards to come out in the set.
I think undoubtedly a success, if not the biggest success this game has seen. I think that what we saw going into League of Explorers was like Hearthstone seemed like it was in its twilight. Not a lot of people were enjoying playing the game. In ladder, things weren't looking good. You had the terror that was Patron Warrior coming in and killing people out of nowhere, and then Secret Paladin was the only thing coming out. And pro players and streamers were coming out, like Firebat was saying that, like, oh, it's just about whoever gets the most value minions out now. And that a lot of people, streamers were stopping to play, and people were like firestorms on Reddit and all that. And so it seemed like the game was in a really bad place, and Blizzard, in true Blizzard fashion, balancing a game only partway because they have a plan for later on, came out and released this expansion that just tied everything together, really brought it all in. And the reason for that is because of my top card in this set, which I think no one can deny except for you, Blake, for some reason. And this card is right here. This is Reno Jackson. So you can see here, it reads, Battle Cry, if your deck contains no more than one of any card, fully heal your hero. And that does two important things. One is it is the stopper to any kind of mass aggro kind of deck. And those decks still exist, don't get me wrong. But it makes it so that they are not overly oppressive to play against, and that somebody just kind of giving everything to have a bunch of value to pull you down early won't stop you, won't like completely take you out of the game. The second thing I think is the most important, and it forces a large amount of deck diversity. If you want this very powerful effect on this card, you have to severely limit the number of duplicates in your deck, and so it brings out the need to have cards that you would never have really considered being used before, at least not as much, because the duplicate of a class card might have been better or something like that. So cards like, for example, in Reno Lock, which is a very popular, a very powerful Warlock edition that runs Reno Jackson, Fugans and Stalag are two cards that are run in that, which have not been run for a very long time, or ever really, since Nex Ramus was released. And most importantly, Twisting Nether, the card with the coolest animation in the whole game but could never find a really good use, has a really great place in that deck. And this card has pretty, in my opinion, single-handedly just changed the meta for the better and just really completed what Blizzard was really going for in their balance. And Blake is about to vehemently disagree with me.
I need to push back against this a little bit because look, I think Reno Jackson is the most overhyped card to come out of League of Explorers. I said it. I said it. Look, this card is
How can you talk to me about overhype after
a
that
good
Patriots rant?
niche card. All right. If you're trying to beat
Niche.
a face hunter, Reno Jackson, you did it. Great, yeah, great job. You know, if you're trying to beat a specific combo deck that has to extend and just waste all its resources on doing a set amount of damage, and if they can't kill you in one turn, you Reno Jackson, you win the game. That happens occasionally, but I think that just the net losses that you suffer by having to put essentially no duplicates in your deck. At best one duplicate in your deck doesn't outweigh the fact that against a lot of board decks that just do board control or late game, you just lose 1 or 2 turns slower. Your Reno Jackson doesn't do a whole lot doesn't do anything to impact the board on that turn you play it. And so for that reason, I think it's a good niche card. But I'll tell you what, the best card to come out of League of Explorers for me was, and the most underrated card from my perspective, is Sir Finley Morgleton. This card is the 1-mana 1/3 which has a battle cry, discover a new hero power. And discover is the new mechanic from League of Explorers where you get 3 random offerings that you can choose one of to get the effect from. This card, when you're talking about cards that have pushed pure diversity into the game, Reno Jackson has spawned, pretty much the only significant thing from Reno Jackson has been a new-ish Warlock variant, right? Which is just, kind of a handlock where you have to be slightly more creative with your deck choices.
You tell that to my Reno Jackson hunter, but all right, you keep going.
But I'm talking about real, right?
Real.
I'm talking about real because what Sir Finley does is he now reinvents whole classes, right? Pretty much every class. So now all these classes that have lent themselves well to particular deck archetypes can now be revisited for dozens of new decks. And so I'm talking about, face shaman, face warrior, face priest, all classes with hero powers that don't contribute to that win condition. You can play Sir Finley and have a very good chance at replacing your hero power with something that actually helps you. Control hunter, where you don't necessarily want your hero power just that doesn't do anything to help you control the board or survive. You can now play Sir Finley. Like I said, reinvents just whole archetypes, and that just on sheer number of diverse decks that this card has created alone, this is the most impactful card from League of Explorers.
I do hear your explanation here, and I'm not going to deny, as you did with me so rudely, I'm not going to deny the impact of Sir Finley Morgleton.
It's just a wake-up call, Connor. It's just a wake-up call.
I will admit that Morgleton, I think, does provide a lot to the game, but I'm going to say he does not provide as much deck diversity as Reno, just because, you're right, he does reinvent the archetype of a class. This is possible. And is the big reason why Face Shaman became, for a brief period of time, such a popular deck. But I couldn't help but notice that you kept, most of your examples were aggro, 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 aggro. The thing is that, like, you're right, like, Sir Finley does allow for classes to change kind of the style that they'll play with, and that will change kind of the cards that they run. Reno forces not only, like, a new style, like a new control style, but also, and I'm kind of I'm the type of person that would definitely rather play control mirror than any match against aggro, like as aggro or against aggro. I understand it's good for laddering, and an aggro mirror actually can be very nuanced in some situations. But I think that playing and winning as a control, especially in a control mirror, just makes you feel so good about yourself, right? Like you really outsmarted your opponent. And Reno just allows for, I think it makes Hearthstone more into what it was meant to be, right? Like you never really know what you're going to draw. You're using such a wide variety of cards that there's so many interesting effects that could happen. But I will admit that Sir Finley employs the effect that I think is the single greatest addition, non-card addition to Hearthstone, which is the Discover mechanic. I think the Discover mechanic, I didn't think that much of it at first, but I think that that's the biggest impact, honestly, of League of Explorers, is this mechanic that gives you at the same time an element of RNG, which is so core to Hearthstone, but also a lot of skill that maybe you don't want to play your discoveries right away. You want to wait and see if you can get something more situational, or choosing something based on what situation you think is going to come up. For example, Dark Peddler is a good example, who gives you a random 1-drop, picking whether you want to pick Mortal Coil to deal 1 damage and draw a card, or whether you want to pick the Pirate that removes a durability from your opponent's weapon. I don't remember what it's called. But each of those are really, really interesting things that can come out. And because the Discover mechanic gives you a higher chance to have a clash card, it's like 400% higher chance. That mechanic, and I will concede a little bit of Murgleton to you there, because he employs that mechanic. I think that mechanic is the biggest winner here, beyond the cards.
Yeah, I also want to give my little spiel for MVP of the set, and that's, I think, a plethora of really quality class minions.
Yeah.
And like you just mentioned one yourself, Dark Peddler, but also, Tunnel Troll,
Ethereal
Museum
Conjurer.
Curator, Ethereal Conjurer, Tomb Pillager, which I actually want to get your thoughts on. These are all, like, across the board cards that fit into established deck types, right? They all fit into known deck archetypes, right? But they just add an interesting new twist on them, and I think that's a brilliant move by Blizzard. And they're all useful, right? There's so many useful cards in this set, and it's great to see.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But my biggest flop, I actually want to get this in real quick, is a card that I was really looking forward to as a very big rogue player. I was really looking forward to a mid-range Death Rattle rogue with this card, Unearthed Raptor. And this card I think it's still a good card, but it's been the biggest flop for me because this deck is just, as it turns out, it's just not quite there yet. There's just not enough synergy with Death Rattles and Rogue yet, where you just don't really want to put Nerubian Egg in a Rogue yet. You don't really want to put, 2 Loot Hoarders in a deck yet, or a Haunted Creeper for Rogue, and so that's been the biggest disappointment for me.
Yeah, I could kind of see that. Unearthed Raptor has not exactly spawned a top-tier deck in the Death Rattle Rogue. It was experimented a lot for a while. I played it for a while and honestly did not find a ton of success. I think it's a really fun card, and on its own is incredibly powerful, copying a Death Rattle effect.
Oh yeah.
And also being a 3-mana 3/4 in general, great stat distribution. It's the biggest flop for me, just because it when it was released, and still a little bit now, would crash the game repeatedly. So it was like you were playing like a disconnect rogue. Like you could see who gets back into the game first. Better internet connection. So it's like a real true pay to win. So because of that, I don't think it's that great. And it does contrast with you wanted to talk a little bit about my other favorite card from this expansion. That would be right here. This is Tomb Pillager. What were your thoughts on Tomb Pillager?
Well, I know that you yourself are a longtime Miracle Rogue player, and there's thought that this card, since it's Death Rattle, put a coin in your hand, and that's another spell for a Gadget Zan, or another spell for a combo, for Sharpsword Oil or something like that, could be kind of the start of a reinvention of Miracle Rogue. And I know that Dog had played a Tomb Pillager Miracle Rogue deck to some success on ladder, actually.
Yeah, the top.
And so I just want to get your thoughts on whether that card. It was middling. Whether that card, whether Tomb Pillager, how it affected the Rogue class, how it affected Miracle Rogue, and whether it's an overall good card for you or not.
Oh yeah, I love this card. I think it's definitely a clear winner over Unearthed Raptor in terms of its effect for the Rogue class. It brings Rogue kind of back to what Rogue does best. Giving it a coin, it means Rogue is not dependent on the coin to get some crazy combos in. It's an excellent tempo card, especially for turn 4, with great stats, potential to do damage. Because with Gadget Stand on turn 6 now, you're waiting for so long. But getting this out on turn 4, you almost want it to die before turn 6 so that you get that extra coin, so you can have your Gadget Stand coin conceal or whatever you want to do. Or even if you don't. And I think it does bring Miracle Rogue into a good place in the meta. Most recently, if you're looking at the most recent Tempo Storm meta snapshots, Miracle Rogue doesn't really have a very high place. But I think that even if you don't run the traditional like Leroy or South Seas or what have you, this card absolutely has a place in a lot of different iterations of Rogue. That the
Right.
tempo it provides you is really incredible.
Because it should be said that that Dog's version of the deck that I just referenced wasn't running Leroy or Shadow
That's
Step or
correct,
anything.
yeah.
It was it seemed to be more of a Oil Rogue variant with Gadget Sand, which I know is a pretty fundamental difference, but that's the best way I can
Yeah.
explain it.
I think, yeah, I really do like that. I do love that card. I think that is my like, while I do love Reno Jackson as like an impact, I think that is my personal favorite card to come out of this expansion. I think this expansion just has so many wonderful things. You're right. Like the class cards are great. I'm a huge fan. If you want to talk trash about League of Explorers, message me. Give me what you got. I'll push back. In the meantime, though, Blake, I want to pivot over to something a little bit more fundamental to what this show is about. So I've been asked a lot by my friends as they're starting to get more into professional sports, the people who aren't into it as much. I've been asked why I'm a fan of the teams that I'm a fan, or why am I even a fan of professional athletics as it exists. And my answer is kind of usually it's all about my parents, and it's all about where I grew up, right? My parents were
Mm-hmm.
really into professional sports, but depending on what sport it was, like my parents were really into football, but they really were not into basketball, for example. And so I am not the biggest basketball fan, but I love all things football. And because of my region, because I grew up in the city of Chicago, I'm kind of raised as this Bears fan, right? Like I love the Bears. The narrative is you love the Bears, you hate the Packers, you hate the Vikings, and you just feel bad for the Lions, right? The four teams that are in your division, and you love your team and you want them to do well. And then as you you tie like a part of your identity to this team, right? And as they win and lose, like you start to feel for them, you feel with them, and that rush of emotion is kind of what keeps you in. People have like likened in watching sports to like how the Romans used to watch the gladiators. You watching people at like the peak of a form of competition, and for that reason, and your allegiance is tied to them for whatever reason. And here it's because of your region. That's not true when it comes to esports. And so I have my own reasons for watching esports that are very similar to sports. But as to why I'm a fan of certain teams, like I've been a longtime fan of CLG, and now I'm becoming a big fan of TSM. And a big reason for that is Doublelift. Doublelift was the reason, honestly, that I started playing AD carry years ago after I saw him in the All-Star game for EU versus NA in season 3, I think it was. It might have been season 3 All-Stars, when he got a pentakill as Ezreal, who's my favorite champion. Seeing him get the highest accolade possible in a game of all All-Stars with my favorite champion made me fall in love with him, and then conversely his team. And then I became attached, and the cycle repeated. And so kind of what I'm going for with the story, Blake, is how do you see the difference between becoming a fan of something in an esport versus becoming a fan of something in a sport, and where does that take kind of the esports industry going forward?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you want to share your own stories, of course, that also.
Right. Well, my stories are as
About
far
how you
as
betrayed the St. Louis Rams, now the LA Rams.
well, okay. Well, since we brought this up like 4 times in 2 shows, I'll give the story. I was born in St. Louis, raised around there for most of my life, and I was watching the 2002-2003 Super Bowl that they were in, the St. Louis Rams with Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk and those guys against Isaac Bruce. Oh my gosh, against the New England Patriots, and it was a great game. I was in 2nd grade. I was watching it just on the edge of my seat in my parents' living room, and we were beat. The St. Louis Rams lost in a last-second field goal in the snow, kicked by Adam Vinatieri. Just crushed me, and I was just distraught. And I swore right then and there that I was never going to be hurt again by the St. Louis Rams. That I was not rooting for losers, I was rooting for winners, and so I converted in the most purest fair weather fan action ever. I converted to the winner of the Super Bowl that year, which was the New England Patriots. And so ever since then, I've been a fan.
So you can see where my lack of respect comes from.
I was too young to be a fan of anything, really, at 2nd grade. Come on. But as far as, you know, but the first thing I defaulted to, like you mentioned, was my geographic region, right? St. Louis Rams. My parents rooted for the Rams. I guess I'm a Rams fan, right? It's pretty fundamental to your identity, um, and that goes for a lot of things. Like I identify as a Missourian before I identify myself as like an American, for an example. It's more closely tied to my identity. But with esports, um, it's for me it's been a more arbitrary experience, and this is because right now there's a pretty big revolving door in the esports community about what teams are in and what teams are out in a particular league, and I'll give League of Legends as an example.
Your league story is even more sad.
Right. Well, because I was first a fan of Vulcan. I thought they were the coolest team ever. And I thought, um, X Smithy was a great jungler once upon a time. Zuna was a hilarious AD carry. And they, changed to XDG. I was like, okay, rebranding, whatever. And then they got bounced. And I was like, well,
they had a terrible, terrible season and were eliminated from the LCS.
And it wasn't that I was upset with them being awful, right? With rooting for an awful team. But I was a little bit more upset with I, of my own volition, chose this team to root for, and they were bad, right? It's even more intrinsic to your identity when a local sports team that's, tied to you from geography or, by family members just poorly, right? That becomes like, oh, you're an anguished fan, you're laboring and you're going to get that one day in the sun, right? But when I chose this team of my own volition and they suck, like very soon after, it's like, what was I really thinking? That almost says something about me as a person.
Yeah.
It's what you feel like. And so but moreover, I couldn't root for them anymore because they weren't in the league. They were gone. They disbanded.
Yeah.
ManCloud went elsewhere,
the team completely broke apart, yeah.
Psycho Sid, the later Benny, just went away. And so then I became a fan of Complexity Black. Same exact thing. I liked all the players individually. I thought they were cool. I thought Broken Shard was cool. I thought Prolly was hilarious. And they had some fun games. They had some great underdog wins against Cloud9. But then they were relegated. And then they broke up.
Knocked out of the league, just like XGG.
Yeah. And I couldn't root for them anymore. And so this has this effect of, like, all fans right now are kind of arbitrary and are, so you're talking about the effect it has on the league. I can't say that I'm a particular fan of any League of Legends team right now, right? Because I don't know if they'll be there tomorrow. We talk about another game, Hearthstone. Who, like, from last year's BlizzCon, 2 years ago, the BlizzCon championship, to last year's BlizzCon, how many repeat players were there in the top 16?
And that's even tougher, too, because you're rooting for individual players rather than a team.
Right.
Like, you could like Cloud9 as a team, but does that mean you're always rooting for Strife Crow as he goes into a tournament? Maybe you really like Trump. Maybe you really like Amaz. Maybe you like Tempo Storm. I don't know.
But even if you liked Firebat, right, the winner of the BlizzCon from 2 years ago, the best player in the world,
right,
he wasn't even at the tournament. He didn't qualify for the tournament last year. So you're just kind of like, that sucks, right?
Yeah.
If I'm a fan of, of Djokovic in tennis, I can pretty much expect him to see him at every major tennis event, right? He might do well in some and poorly in others, but I can see him and root for him everywhere.
That's true. That's a little different.
There's a little bit of this inconsistency, right, in esports that I think really fundamentally affects
being a fan.
That
makes sense. I see that. And looking at other leagues too, it's easier with the team sports, obviously. With things like CS:GO or with Hearthstone, or not Hearthstone, with Dota and with League of Legends. And you're right. And what I kind of see here, which is really interesting to me, is this narrative of it's like destiny versus choice, or like predetermination versus choice. Like I can't see myself being a fan of or a serious fan, I guess, of another NFL team. Like I am a Bears fan through and through because that's just how I was born. And because I've chosen to be a big fan of the NFL, there's this whole thing. You stick with your team as they go through hard times, and you feel I'm a better example. I'm a Cubs fan, and we haven't won the league in over 100 years, and that's just this burden that I was I'm not going to tread too far into this Destiny territory because I feel like I might be stepping on some toes. But it's kind of this burden that I accepted for being a fan of whatever I'm in my region. Whereas,
and it's kind of fun, right? It's not wholly
no,
negative
it's not.
when your team that you inherit, or for some reason that way, does poorly,
because if
right?
they do well, it becomes this amazing feeling. But then,
Right.
what's weird about esports is that I chose the team, and I was a fan of CLG for a long time, and I chose to be a consistent fan. But at any given point, other than like my admiration for a few of the players, like there are other teams that I easily could have, I think, jumped shipped towards. And I did become a really big. I of course, like whenever Worlds comes around, I'm always a huge fan of Cloud9, and I was a big fan of CLG during this Worlds. But like now coming in, like you're right. Like with all the teams shuffling around all the time, like I don't know. Like it's all determined on the players, more so than anything else. It's like I'm not gonna be like I love JJ. I love JJ Watt, but that doesn't mean I'm like a diehard Texans fan. Like I don't really care if the Texans win or lose. But if I love Poe Belter, I want Immortals to do super well. And that, I think, changes how we understand kind of this level of competition and how we engage in it. Because esports and sports, like anything, is built upon the fans. Because the fans are the people that justify its existence, and they're the ones that bring the revenue, right?
Right. Well, and I want to say, too, that this revolving door, kind of functionality of esports as we know it right now is necessary for a while, right? Because through this growing pains period of esports, because what if in League of Legends, what if Velocity was still around, right?
Yeah.
What if Coast was still
These
around?
like terrible organizations that just cannot seem to field teams.
Against all authority, right? What if they were still around? It's just like that. That's just bad, right? So you want the lower quality teams to keep cycling out, and eventually higher quality teams, like hopefully NRG stays around for a while, right? That sounds like they could potentially be a long-standing organization, some serious backing. But hopefully they're just a mainstay in League from here on out. And so, but at some point, if you want the kind of consistency, right, that kind of feel that we get from sports, eventually that has to stop, right? This relegation can't really be allowed to continue. I don't know really where you draw the line, and I also know that there's a prime sports example, right, that flies in the face of that, which is the Premier Soccer League in England, right, where they do relegate teams there. But I think I really think that has to end at some point for fandom to really move into that next stage that I'm talking about.
I think that's. I do agree with that because, and especially because of your XGG example, and because teams being auto-relegated, or relegation in general for a team just causes them to scatter, and what that has the kind of other effect of doing is it causes all the teams, the current teams, to just kind of rearrange, right? Because it's like, maybe they want that one really good guy from the team, like everyone else was bad, like from Coast, Zion Spartan, or now Darshan and Shifter were the two standout players on that team, and they kind of moved around, and that created shuffling of like the entire league, because it's like then that team wants to pick up the good player, so they drop their current, like still good but like not as good player, and then maybe another team wants that to fill the league, and then it all just moves around because of how fluid these rosters are. And I think that. But I do wonder about your statement that says that this has to stop, because one of the most fun things for me, and you might agree with this to me, has been like off-season drama is such a huge thing in League of Legends. Like the fact that Doublelift switched from CLG to TSM was huge, driving him to have over 100,000 Twitch viewers on his stream, like the day after it happened when he started. Like the amount of attention that draws over, I think, and like with the off season, some people say like, oh, the off season's like more exciting than the Worlds because you never know what's going to happen, and then it starts every season with this fresh like, oh, I'm not too sure which team I'm going to like, but I really want to watch these games. I think that it's not necessarily bad that there is this fluidity, and I think that while you don't have as loyal or dedicated fans, that it does keep it going, and at least in the medium term, I think it's good. I think at the long term, it's going to start to get interesting because of I think dedicated fans are what drive franchises. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you can still have off-season drama without that whole relegation cycle. I agree that it's definitely accentuated by it. But let me uh, let me bounce a hypothetical
Yeah.
off you, right? Because I think that one day this is going to trend in esports towards a geographic thing. Right now,
Yeah, you
to
think it's gonna
have
be like
League of
the,
Legends
the,
as
the
an example
Chicago
again,
CLG or something like that?
I kind of hope so. And let me just bounce this off you to see if this seems plausible to you. But let's say TSM, right, which is a global organization by now
Mm-hmm.
and has multiple esports teams in Counter Strike and Hearthstone and
Super Smash
in
Brothers,
Yeah,
Dota, like
exactly.
whatever. Yeah,
They're in a lot of things, right? What if they just say we're going to consolidate and put our world headquarters in New York, right? And we're going to have an office there, um, and so they kind of that's kind of the hub of their marketing. It's the hub of their merchandising, right? But let's say that they also have some space there, and they just say, and also, we're just going to do this thing for TSM fans. If you can't get to Europe to watch our Counter Strike team, or if you can't get to Los Angeles to watch our League of Legends team, we're going to stream all the TSM matches for various esports. We're going to stream them in this little auditorium, right, in New York.
like a
That's like you
stadium.
can tell. I don't think it'll be a stadium at first, right?
But that's
These
where you're
are
going with this, right?
right, and so I think that's how you get the little seeds of a geographic fan base. Because all of a sudden, people in New York have an outlet to root for TSM, right? They can show up to physical events, or they can show up to watch a stream of their team.
It's just different though because rather than the city being the unifying factor between the different like sports that exist, it's the team that's the unifying factor between the different esports. It's as if they're like what you're kind of describing. It's almost as if like the Bears had like their football team, but then the
Right.
Blackhawks were actually like the Bears in hockey, and like that name was just kind of kept for all the teams owned by the organization.
But there is a unifying factor between those two, right? And it's just not the team name; it's the word Chicago, right?
Yeah,
Because if I'm a fan of, I can be a fan of TSM and be a fan of their Hearthstone, Super Smash, League of Legends, Counter Strike teams, right? But if I'm a fan of Chicago, right, that also means I'm pretty much predisposed to be a fan of their basketball, hockey, football teams, right? So like unifying aspects, I feel like isn't a problem. Even from a brand perspective, I don't think it's too much of a problem. I want to bounce that off you and see if that sounds like a plausible way that this might trend one day.
I think it's plausible. I don't your stadium thing. I see where you're going with it. I don't quite see it going exactly like that. But I see what you're saying. The regionality thing is also tough because, like in the LCS, for example, all the teams play in the kind of Los Angeles area because that's just where Riot headquarters is. That's where and it's just where, and they all have to play kind of in the same stadium environment. You can't it's not like it doesn't really make any sense for there to be like Riot Studios all across the map and teams to like fly out to each one to like meet them in their home studio or something like that. Like that
Right.
in this type of game, I don't think that quite makes as much sense. I'm actually not as familiar with how that works in like games like Counter-Strike, and I think that's something that we should look a little bit more into. But
Yeah, it's definitely more decentralized, right? I mean, Valve doesn't run and operate all the stadiums that they play in and things like
yeah,
that.
and there are tournaments all around, and I think, and so what's interesting is because of that, so much of the regional, and I think this is worth talking about too, because these esports are all international, and the regionalism from these don't come from cities; they come from your region, and so
That's
that's where
true.
like there's such vehement bickering between fans of EU and NA, especially recently in League of Legends, because
When there need not be, we have a common
we
enemy.
have a common enemy in Eastern Asia, just China and Korea, just always kicking the crap out of us. Although EU making the finals and showing in Worlds was big, but they still lost to Korea, and so it's like oh, there's this whole for the West narrative that fell apart really quickly after NA was knocked out of Worlds in the group stage, and so
But you're right. Yeah, a form of regionality that we commonly see in sports
but
was definitely exhibited there.
and it is, and like the bickering between fans in EU and NA is very similar to like Chicago versus Green Bay. And
I don't know if anything's that toxic.
well, maybe not, but you get to the point where like oh you could insult, like you see insulting, you insult the region, you insult the city, like it's all kind of built in there. but it's built in there on top of this lack of regionality at the smaller level. Like within the NALCS, you're free to pick and choose your team, but come international tournament time, you're probably going to be an NA fan if you're from NA. And so it's this weird, like, almost like federalist, for lack of a better word, like just kind of set of organizations that happen that I think make that, more than anything else, I think makes the future of kind of esports as a competitive landscape more difficult to predict. I think this regionalism on the international level plays such a big role and undermines the national level regionalism. It's a little different in EU too, because some teams are from specific countries. Like all the players will be like M5 is the biggest example, like the Russian team,
right?
But there's still a lot of mixing going on there. It's tough. I don't really know where it's going to be going, but I think it's definitely worth thinking about.
So we're gonna table this discussion for now. But this has been a fascinating thought exercise. We're hopefully gonna keep revisiting this and pick up on these common themes between sports and esports, and see where the parallels lie and see where the differences are, and kind of pull out the interesting intricacies of those things. But for now, we're going to finish the first part of today's show by looking ahead to next week's NFL Conference Championship games. They're going to be between the Patriots and the Broncos for the AFC, and then the Panthers and Cardinals for the NFC. We're going to start with the Pats-Broncos game, Connor. The Brady Manning Bowl is going to take place in Mile High Stadium. The Broncos pushed ahead of the Steelers with 11 straight unanswered points in the fourth quarter, and Peyton Manning looked healthy after returning from his foot injury, which had him sidelined for 2 months. So, Connor, I want to know who wins and moves on to Super Bowl 50, and I definitely want to score for this one.
Oh, you want to score? Oh, that's...
I want to score for this one. This is the conference championship.
All right, that's fine. Well, first of all, Manning-Brady Bowl, potentially, maybe it's safe to say this is going to be the last one ever, because not a lot of people are expecting Manning to come back next season. And so this is like the Nadal versus Federer. This is the Lakers versus the Celtics. This is Jordan versus Magic. This is the marquee matchup of this generation in football, and maybe even ever. These are two of the best players to ever play the game, facing off against each other in a match to go to the Super Bowl. While I'm pretty confident that the two teams kind of going into the AFC Championship game are both worse than each of the teams going into the NFC Championship game, and that this is going to be the less exciting match for that reason. That's one of my predictions. This is going to be the least exciting of the two matches. It still cannot be understated what the kind of historical significance of this match. That these two are two of the greats, kind of in their twilight, and we get to see them play again. And it really is a privilege of us being able to watch these people. The interesting thing about and Brady definitely has the heads up in the matchups between the two. Historically, both in terms of his Super Bowl record, not his regular season accolades, but in terms of his postseason accolades and the head-to-head, he's generally better. But the important thing to remember, though, is that Brady does not play against Peyton Manning in this game. Brady plays against the Denver defense, and Peyton plays against the Patriots defense. And for that reason, I'm giving this match to Denver. The Patriots, it should be noted, are about 2-6 in Mile High Stadium in Denver. The only quarterbacks that Brady has ever beaten there are Tim Tebow and I'm blanking on his name, but the guy before Tim Tebow.
Kyle Orton.
No, actually he didn't. I think Orton beat Brady there. There's one other before him that he lost to. But that's not important. The point is that Brady has not beaten Manning in this stadium, and that home field advantage is going to be big. The Denver defense is what is leading this team, and if anything has been proven is that defense wins championships, and defense can get you into a championship. And so I'm calling it 23-10 Broncos for this game.
23-10. You're giving them 2 touchdowns up over the Patriots?
It's not quite 2 touchdowns.
You get 13 points,
It's two scores.
multiple scores.
It's two scores. It's a touchdown and 2 field goals, or it's a 2 touchdowns and a missed extra point, or however you want to do it. I'm giving them 23-10. I'm saying it's going to be a relatively low scoring game with the Broncos coming out on top.
Wow, that kind of shocks me, Connor. I'll be honest. You're right. This is a historically significant, all time great NFL rivalry. Where this has been a back and forth between Brady and Manning. And I have to say, though, when we talk about Manning, right, and I've kind of defended him in past shows where I've said he's not that far removed from the Manning who was leading MVP conversations, right, who was breaking records. He's not that far removed from that. And I've always said that, I want Peyton Manning for his brain more than his arm. I've never wanted him for his arm.
Yeah.
In fact, I've usually wanted him for his brain in spite of his arm. But I'll be honest with you. In that game against the Steelers on Sunday, he was looking healthy, but that arm was looking real shaky. He just didn't appear to be
drop passes though.
He did. You're right. He had like 6 or 7 drops, which were inexcusable, and really he should have thrown for about 280 yards. I think, as it is, I think he had 220. But he didn't look like he was a significant deep threat. He just couldn't get the ball downfield with any accuracy. His short range balls were really wobbling. The velocity was down. It looked really, really bad. So my question to you is this: can Peyton Manning go out and win you a game?
Oh yeah.
Because even though the Denver defense is staunch, the Patriots defense just got back Devin McCourty, Gerard Mayo, Chandler Jones, Dante Hightower. They got back some of their horses. Malcolm Butler is their cornerback, right? Who saved the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He's a stud. Because I know Brady can go in. Like I said, he doesn't even have to be Psycho Tom. He just has to be Tom Brady. His great self to go out and win you a game. Because I know Peyton Manning can go out and not lose you a game, right? I know he can do that. But can he go out and seize it and take it? Because I don't know if he can in his condition right now, and I have a lot of questions about that.
I think that's a fair point to bring up. I still think that Peyton Manning, like you said, you want him for his brain, didn't have the greatest showing against the Steelers, but the Steelers defense really brought it to him. And I don't doubt the Patriots will still be good, but I think that the Broncos defense is, let me try to word this. The Broncos defense is more better than the Patriots offense than the Patriots defense is over the Broncos offense. Did you follow that?
Yeah, I did. We'll definitely have to see. Because like you said, like we've been saying, Peyton Manning is basically an offensive coordinator on the field.
Yeah.
So he is great at exploiting defenses and reading
it's not just like throwing the ball either. It's creating openings that like Ronnie Hillman can get through. That like the Broncos running backs can really produce. Yeah,
C.J. Anderson has been really proving himself this year.
Especially C.J. Anderson.
But you're gonna match that general that play caller knowledge, right, against the genius of Mr. Hoodie himself, Bill Belichick, who most people assume is just an offensive-minded guy since he's got such a great quarterback. But Bill Belichick is really a defensive guy at heart. And he is preparing for every single game. He's preparing for every single coach and every single quarterback individually, right? He knows exactly what he wants to do in a given game plan, in a given game. And so I really think that's going to, he's going to give Peyton Manning some fits.
I don't doubt that at all. And I said it before, Belichick, Brady, that's all you need, right? And that this is going to be a big match. But the thing is that, and that's why I think it's going to be such a great one to watch. It's just, losing my voice. It's just that I think the Broncos defense all season long has just, with Von Miller making plays, with just everyone coming in and just really showing up on that team, that this is going to be really the true test. You saw Brock Osweiler take out this Patriots team just not too long ago either.
Okay. Simultaneously with your DBs taking out Gronk's knees.
And it could happen again. It's what I'm saying, is that you have a somewhat injured Patriots team. And while they are resurging, I'm bringing your Packers explanation from the other day that you said the Packers were a bad team. I'm not calling the Patriots a bad team necessarily, but I think that they can be overhyped from that win over the Chiefs.
Against an 11 straight win Chiefs team? What?
That doesn't matter at all in the playoffs.
They're comparing the Chiefs to the Redskins right now. Come on, man, that's not fair.
It's different.
That's not fair to Alex Smith.
Hey, Kirk Cousins not only was looking really good, but you as a Patriots fan especially can't talk to me about like how good a team is just because of a win streak they have going into a game. All right, I don't care if you've won 18 games going into a season. A somewhat mediocre Giants team could still take you out.
You're going to try and argue to me that the Chiefs were a bad team and that the Patriots beat a bad team.
I'm not trying to say the Chiefs were a bad team. I'm saying that just because they had won all those games straight does not mean that they were the best team in the postseason.
I didn't say that ever, but it certainly gives some indication that they were pretty darn good.
I'll put it this way. I think that the 4 teams that are in right now, and not because of their seeding, I think the 4 teams that are still in are indisputably the 4 best teams in the NFL this season.
I agree. Well, let me. I told you to give me a score, so I'm gonna give you a score too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 28-17 Patriots.
It's like the same margin for you.
No, that's not. That's
it's
an 11-point margin.
That's barely a score. That's a safety difference.
It's different, all right.
Okay.
It's different.
It's still 2 possessions. It's 2 possessions still.
You had the audacity to say that Tom Brady and the Patriots are going to score 10 points in this game. They are scoring more than 10 points. They're scoring twice as many as that at least.
Okay, fine. They'll score 20. That means the Broncos still win in my projection.
But like you said, all you need is Brady and Belichick. But this game, the Patriots have a lot more than that coming back.
All right, that's interesting and all. The other game that we have, that's
in the NFC. We have the Cardinals traveling to Charlotte to play the Panthers.
Yeah.
Cam Newton and the Panthers are coming off a very up and down performance against the Seattle Seahawks last weekend, where they opened up scoring 31 points in the first half, while simultaneously holding the Seahawks scoreless, but giving up 24 points in the second half while being held scoreless themselves. Connor, this matchup depends a lot on which Carolina team that showed up on Sunday you thought was the real Carolina team. So talk to me a little bit about how confident you are in that team.
I'm pretty confident in this Carolina team. I think the first half Carolina team is, or I'm gonna say maybe like the second quarter Carolina team is like the real Carolina team. I'm not gonna say the first half because Carolina opened up with, I mean, they scored on their opening drive. Like, that's good. Like, that happens, But then immediately getting a pick 6, like, right after that. Being up, I think there's a whole mental thing here. Being up 31-0 at halftime is insane. And it's a point in which you are 99%, if you're the 0 team, you're 99% not going to win this game, right? And that does something to the team that's winning, right? It makes you think, like, you could say you didn't do it, but you were thinking that this game is a lock, and you're not going to play as hard. You're not going to bring it. It's just mentally it's like almost like you have too much momentum, right? It's like mentally you're going in thinking that you've won, and even if you kind of shore up as it goes on, I think to say that the second half Panthers team is the real one is absolutely incorrect. I think this I say second quarter just because first quarter was just kind of a lot of just very sudden big plays and then not a whole lot else. I think that the Panthers in general are a team that is going to score on you a lot, and Cam Newton is just going to he's playing out of his mind. I think that this Panthers team versus this Cardinals team are the 2 best teams in the league right now, and that they are going to bring one heck of a show. It might not be like the most scoring game, but this is going to be 2 amazing football teams clashing against each other. The Cardinals with Larry Fitzgerald and Cam Newton are both having career years, and it's awesome. And so while this Panthers defense, which is like very occasionally gives up 40 points to the Saints, but then is mostly like pretty solid, versus this Cardinals defense that is insanely good right now. It's just going to be it's a game in which the teams are high caliber at every phase of the ball, and I think that it's going to be great. But I think that and the Panthers are going to bring it, but they are by no means going to win this like 100%. And I think this is too close to call. I don't know what score I would give.
No, you're not weaseling out of that.
I can't.
You're not. You gotta pick a winner, man.
They're so. I'm picking. I'm gonna say 32. No, that's a weird score. 31. 28. Panthers. That's my score. I don't know. I can't do
Okay. Well, like you, I think the first half Panthers are the real Panthers. Okay. But I also want to give credence, or I also don't. I want to push back against the notion that the second half Panthers aren't the real Panthers, right?
Well, of course they're all the real Panthers, but I know what you mean.
I'm just saying that this is in them, right? That they have shown a tendency to blow big leads late in games, right? And it doesn't have to be to a great Seattle Seahawks team. They did it with the Giants, if you remember. They almost, they were really up, probably like 20 points in that game, and they almost came back and they almost lost that one. Blew leads against the Saints, if you remember. So they definitely because you could tell in the Seahawks game. Coming out of halftime up 31-0, the defense just went into full-on prevent defense mode, right? They were just trying to not give up big plays. But if you noticed, that didn't work. They gave up big plays, right?
Yeah.
They gave up big plays all over the place. So these are worrying signs.
It's a worrying trend
for on the Panther side. Yeah, I do think that this defense,
the Diamond 2 Panthers coming in. I told you.
I do think that you're right.
Sorry.
And on the other side, on the Cardinals side, I think this game is going to be career defining for Carson Palmer. He just won his first playoff game ever.
Yeah.
Last week. This is make or break for him. This really is. And I think he's a good quarterback. I think he had a very mediocre showing last week. I think he's really going to show up and play his heart out. Larry Fitzgerald, like you and me concur, this man is the one player in the NFL that really needs a ring right now. I think they're going to come out and play like it. I'm actually picking the Cardinals in this game, 31-28.
Oh.
And I had that written down before you said your score. Yes, I did.
That's great. I made that up off the top of my head. Okay, I think this is kind of funny. What it sounds like you're saying is that the key to victory for the Panthers is to not get really far ahead.
That's a legitimate thing, though. That is a legit thing.
It could be for the mentality of this team that they should not get really far ahead, especially early.
Yeah. And I want to tie another point into this, which is that loss against Atlanta was probably the best thing that could have happened to that Carolina team.
Oh yeah.
I think if they had come into the Seattle game unbeaten, I think they might lose that game.
That's a fair point.
I think that really woke them up. But yeah, so we got it. You have Panthers over Cardinals 31-28. I have Cardinals over Panthers 31-28.
Two very the complete opposite Super Bowls coming in.
I think it'll be a last drive field goal.
That's why I picked that score too.
There you go.
But what I said is that so you have Patriots Cardinals in the Super Bowl and I have Broncos Panthers.
That's gonna be awesome to see who comes out on top.
We're both gonna be wrong, but whatever.
Well, we're gonna leave that. Leave those predictions behind in the main segment of our show. We're going to move on to another segment of the show.
Yeah.
A new one than last week. We like to call this one, What's the Word? So I'm going to give Connor an event or a topic, and I want him to give me one word that really signifies what he thinks about that story. So Connor, we're gonna do this first one, which you may have heard of, which is the crazy coin flip for the Packers-Cardinals game on Saturday night. When moving into overtime, the referee performed the standard coin flip to determine a choice of possession, except bizarrely that coin flip somehow went awry. The coin, when he placed it heads up, he flew into the air and landed on the ground without ever turning over. And the Packers, who had called tails, just started to protest in disbelief. They're like, wait, what? And so the ref just said, mulligan, and he picked up the coin and flipped it again, and it was still heads, meaning the Cardinals got first possession and then subsequently never gave Green Bay a chance. So Connor, I want to give you, want you to give me your word for this bizarre situation.
This is tough because I have two different words I would use to describe this, and each one very much changes how I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to say them both because that's just the type of guy I am.
You're breaking the rules on our first ever What's the Word?
Yeah, I am. So the first word I'm going to say is this. I'll make them both fast. The first word is descriptive. I think this just silly scenario is a good little descriptive version of the game as a whole. I think the fact that like they're going in overtime and the coin doesn't flip, and Green Bay gets a redo, and then they lose anyway. I think that describes the game as a whole, and hopefully we'll have more. We'll later on in our show's tenure we'll be talking more about stuff like that. But the other word that I want to use is retribution, and I think this is the word I like better because
Whoa.
Blake, I don't know if you're aware, but recently, so last year, after the Green Bay lost in overtime in the playoffs on the first possession, similar to this year, never getting a possession, the Chicago Bears, their rival, proposed a rule that would make it so, like in college football, both teams would be guaranteed a possession in overtime. Green Bay Packers voted against this, despite that loss. And guess what just happened to them this past weekend? They lost in overtime without ever getting a possession, without ever getting a chance again in the playoffs. And so, for ignoring the generosity of their wonderful, benevolent rivals, I'm saying that this is retribution. That they lost the coin toss twice in order to let this happen, too.
I love it. I love it. Well, my word is fair. And I'm talking about the way the coin flip itself was handled. Because the referee, he's right on the spot. He couldn't do this again if he tried it 100 times, right? Flicking the coin up and it just not turning over at all and landing on the side that he had placed head up, right? And the Green Bay Packers are like, the captains are like advancing on this poor little ref. Like, they're like, it never flipped. And they're like, very accusatory, and that ref knows that the eyes of the nation are on him right now, and he, without consulting a rule book, without doing anything, just acts in basic fairness. He quickly said, it didn't flip, picked it up, and flipped it again. And that, is admirable for me, because in this era where we've already, us as fans love to roast refs, that guy knew we were going to be like, his actions were going to be under a microscope.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't try and consult a rule book or say like, oh, well, what do we do in this bizarre situation? He just said, look, this is the spirit of the rule. I know it. You know it. I'm not going to consult with anybody. I'm not going to ask whether this is okay. I'm not going to send it up to the booth for review on whether the coin wobbled in the air or not. I'm just going to reflip it, and we're just going to go on with our lives. So this was fair.
Oh, we're throwing the red flag to challenge the play. The ruling of the field is as stands. The coin did not flip in the air. What constitutes a flip?
The coin had to make a...
Did it make a coin?
Yeah, the coin had... Yeah, it had to make a designated flipping motion.
Did it make a football move before it flipped? Oh my gosh.
The referee had to have possession of that coin before he flipped
it. We need to have a section on what constitutes a catch at some point.
No one knows.
Because nobody knows. It's a fundamental thing in this league, and nobody knows. That's great.
All right, so our next topic, over in the NBA, the Golden State Warriors have taken a recent dip after losing 2 of 3, falling to, oh my god, 37-4. Connor, give me a word to describe the Warriors' recent plight after 2 close losses in their historic season.
My word is so, with a question mark. If you didn't get that. This is just kind of like when they lost their first big one, it was like, ooh, like history broken, like no more streak. Now it's like, all right, since that's happened, like, were you expecting them to win all the other games except for that one? Like, no, like, of course not. That
kinda.
Really?
They're looking pretty good.
Like they are, but I think it's just statistically when you play this many games, you're just gonna have some losses. You're gonna have some off days. Things are gonna be wrong. Not everything's gonna gel. Whatever. 2 in a row. All right, that sucks. 26 in a row is a different story. Come back to talk to me when it starts to get a little bit worse. But for right now, yeah, like you just said, 37-4. I think this is ridiculous. My word is so.
Well, my word is worrying.
Oh, really?
But it's not worrying on the part of the Golden State Warriors because they lost a couple of close games, and that's just what happens. My word is worrying for the next opponent that they play, which would be the Cleveland Cavaliers last night. And you just could feel that the Warriors were just seething from having lost, having lost two close games almost back to back. They were just going to take it all out on. They could hear the doubters in their heads, and this is a team that every one of those little things, every one of those little milestones, every one of those little stats, they really internalize. It really means a lot to them, especially Draymond Green, who's been having an MVP caliber season. They really, really use it to fuel this internal rage, and you could just tell, coming out of the gates last night, they were just going to walk all over the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're going to say, yeah, by the way, we did this to you in the finals last year. We're going to try and do it to you in the finals again this year. We're just going to crush you.
They won by 34 points.
Yeah, did it to you on Christmas Day. Let's go out and just shoot some fish in a barrel, right? So that was my word, worrying, but not for the Warriors. By the way, 37-4. But you know what the crazy thing is? They actually have company in the standings.
Oh yeah.
The San Antonio Spurs are up there. They're not being left in the dust. That's crazy.
That is pretty ridiculous.
We're gonna move to our last.
That. That was creative.
Yeah. We're gonna move to our last. What's the word topic, which is the tennis betting scandal that's come to light through reporting from great reporting from BBC and mediocre reporting from BuzzFeed. It's been brought to light that there is potentially a roots of gambling and betting scandal embedded in tennis that might be moving up to the higher echelons of competitive play.
Match fixing.
And potentially, match fixing and set throwing, game throwing, point throwing. That this might even have reached up to taint its first, Grand Slam tournament, the Australian Open, including accusations that at least one highly competitive singles player is involved in some serious allegations. So Connor, give me your word for this this worrying story.
My word is just going to be, I'm going to say sad as my word. I can't think of a better word. And I think that's just because, so I'm a long-time tennis fan. Tennis is probably my number 2, number 3 sport behind football. I'm huge. I've been at the U.S. Open. I've been a fan of guys like Andy Roddick, Rafael Nadal, who just got knocked out of the Australian Open, actually.
He threw.
I really hope not. It's just, whenever I hear allegations of I can't say it. Match fixing. Yeah, match fixing.
You got
Whenever
it.
I hear allegations of that, I just get really sad and upset because I'm a super competitive guy. The competition's the reason why I love these sports. Watching the story rivalries that exist in tennis. I mentioned Nadal, Federer before. And there's also and Djokovic being thrown into the mix as well. Guys like Agassi, Sampras when I was younger. Those matches and the competition, the spirit that's there, is, especially because it's one-on-one, is so amazing. And to hear that is something that might be tarnished, that might be tampered with in some way, is just really sad. And there's been match fixing in eSports before, in tournaments. I think that teams like Dignitas have been involved with, and it is just, I hate hearing it. And even if it's not true, it's just the fact that these allegations have been brought up. It just makes me very sad.
Well, my word is vague. And I want to echo why this is a serious problem for tennis. And I say vague because tennis recently constructed a body a few years ago to investigate gambling accusations like these. It's called the Tennis Integrity Commission, Tennis Integrity Association, something of that along that lines. And so that body just did an investigation in which it
Tennis
highlighted
Integrity Unit.
Yeah, that's right. in which it confirmed that there was some suspicion, some maybe heavy circumstantial evidence surrounding at least a few top tier players, right, or at least one top tier player, I think it was, but it wouldn't give names. It wouldn't give any names, and so that's bad because that it's turned this into a whodunit,
He said, she said kind of thing.
murder mystery of all the tennis superstars in the game today. And that when one name is potentially soiled and we don't get that name, it drags everyone's character through the mud. And tennis just totally dealt a blow to every one of its superstars. And that vagueness of that report is terrible. So I want to echo the words of Roger Federer, which are really, I think, mature sentiments, which are, we need some names, right? We need to, so then we can actually have something to debate.
Yeah.
Then we can actually have something to discuss. When he's saying, was it a player? Was it the support staff? Was it, in the past? Was it happening now? At what levels of play? Did they throw a set? Did they, were they compensated highly? Were they being threatened? These things are contextual details that provide nuance and sophistication to a story. And right now, with when we don't have those details, that vagueness of the story that tennis is allowing to perpetrate is destroying the reputation, is hurting the reputations of the entire sport and every player in it. And I find that very, very sad.
Yeah, there's my word right there. I'm 100% with you on that, and we're going to be following the story kind of as it goes on. But for now, we've kept you for a while, and if you've been with us for the whole time, thank you so very much. But we're going to our last segment. Of course, this is bold predictions. I predicted the Super Bowl, I believe, last week, and Blake said something that wasn't actually bold. So we're going into bold predictions, Blake. I want to hear something big from you this week, all right? Give me, what are you predicting?
Well, we'll be keeping track of these bold predictions, by the way, as they come true and keeping a running tally. So we'll see who really comes out with the last word in this one. But my bold prediction is in line with something I mentioned earlier about Team Immortals not being world beaters. They're not golden gods, all right? So I'm predicting that this week, next week in the NALCS, that Team Immortals are going 0-2 to bring them back down to a 2-2, 500 rating. They're going to show that, and I think that these are going to be these losses are going to be significant, significant losses. Because, by the way, they're playing TSM and Energy.
Yeah.
So I don't think Immortals win either of those games. They go 0-2.
Wow. Blake, I love that you made this prediction because it falls very much in line with my own prediction. And I love making bold, long-term predictions. My prediction also has to do with Team Immortals. I am predicting Team Immortals to go undefeated this split.
Hold on. So Connor, I want to give you a little anecdote, right?
Yeah, give it to me.
There is a cliff in this in Yosemite, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's right off a kind of like a viewing patio where you have little binoculars and everything. People go off sometimes to hang off this cliff, which is like 1,000-foot drop straight down.
Uh-huh.
And they take pictures of themselves hanging off it. And there's a sign there that says, "There's a fine line between bravery and stupidity." And Connor, I want to. That's what your prediction brings to mind. There's a difference between bold and insane. You don't have to do this to impress me, man. You don't have to make these insane predictions. Just be bold. I'll give you a bold prediction.
All right, I'll admit yours was bold. Mine's a little insane. Mine's a little big, but I think
a little bit.
And if you want to hear a little explanation here, and I think it goes back to what we heard from Poe Belter in his interview, what we heard about this team mentality. And like I said, if they lose a game, that'll say a lot about them. If they don't have an undefeated split, I still think they're getting first place. And the reason for that is because this is a team that, beyond even their support staff, this is a team that I think just likes each other. And that is something that you don't see in every team, and that is something that is so critical to working together, because League of Legends is a team game. You can be individually skilled, you can be individually outplayed, but at the end of the day, what matters is how you work together. And this is, I think, the team that is going to show that the best this split. I'm not saying the next split that they're going to be, it's not even clear to me that they're going to go to Worlds yet, honestly. But I think that this split, or even win the playoffs, I'm just talking about the regular season. But this split, Immortals is going to show us something very special. And I want you to be with me when you see that. And then,
well, we're going to be keeping track, man, and so all the viewers can see it as
that's
well.
That's right. But for now, this has been 4th&Baron. Thank you all for coming in and listening. We're going to be getting more episodes out next week, of course, and we will also probably be releasing some other videos in the meantime. So be on the lookout for that, and good night.
Take care. Lindsay Keener, shout out. She asked me to do that.